do, do. Live streaming. Hey, everybody. Did I get it right? Did I get the daylight savings thing right? Is everybody like an hour early over in the States? Or is this going to be a 2-hour live stream and it's going to be very embarrassing because nobody's going to show up for a while? Hey! Good, glad that I got it right. Hello, everybody. So let me know, is the sound okay? Is the picture okay? Is everything good? Great Lord, great viewers. Oh, hardy apprentices who joined me across the ether. Stay a while and listen. Greetings, traveler. Vietnam, far out. Hello. It's going well. Hey, Beard Bear, glad you could join me. Hello, everybody. Wow, everybody's filing in. How's it going? Take a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Eric, nice to see ya. Christopher, Pope, Scott Poe. Hey, nice to see you, Scott. Glad you could join me. The future is full of doom. Tristan is going to fall. Save yourselves. Hey, Keith. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Just going to get straight into it. Talk about stuff. Hey, Australia. Hey, Daniel. G'day. So, last week, Finn Aarons asked me about 50,000 times, and I managed to miss it every single time, about elemental realms and elemental cosmology, and whether I'm going to do bards as a character class video. I know I'm slacking on. I'm rolling out those character class videos very, very slowly, I know, but they take a lot of work to do, and there's just I get stuck on one series at a time. But sorcerers are going to be the next character class that I'm going to be doing. And then probably bards will come along, but there's also like paladins and fighters and things like that. So there's I've got to get rid of sort of the big ones out of the way, and I want to do spellcasting classes as well. So maybe bards will slip in there before fighters. Who knows? What's my favorite Diablo class? Oh man, that's a tough question. What did I play most often? I liked the Necromancer, but I didn't take it all the way. I'm a Diablo 2 fan, really. I like Diablo 2 a lot more than I liked Diablo 3. Although I hear there's lots of expansions and stuff, I was really disappointed with the lack of gameplay when it first came out, and I just sort of dropped my support for it, and they may have improved that, but too bad they lost me. It was beautiful, sumptuous, but yeah, just not enough gameplay compared to Diablo 2. Oh, Diablo 2 was just a saga. So probably the Barbarian, honestly, was one of my favorites. Yeah, just being able to pound everything that you come across is really good. 4 microbrews, good stuff. Man, I should drink while I'm doing this as well. I've got some shout outs while I've got everybody here, just to get them out of the way. This is good channels, and channels that I listen to a lot that I should really shout out because they're part of my gaming community. Last night I watched a really good video on modular ivy, very useful ivy that you can build using string and like parsley and stuff like that, from Landvater's Lair. That's Landvaettrs Lair. And he's got some really good stuff. It's mainly a crafting channel. Black Magic Craft, of course. The Crafting Muse. She's just hit about 2,000 subscribers, and she's really good. I was just having a chat with her on Facebook last night. She's a lovely lady. Bud's RPG review. Bud does really good reviews of quite often old school or kind of rare or out of the way RPGs, and he does them really well, and he's got that sing-song sort of Welsh accent that's really easy to listen to. How to D&D, my compatriot over here in Hamilton in New Zealand, has got a rapidly growing channel, and he covers a lot of basic D&D lore. Arcane Forge, of course, Josh does illustrations of monsters as he's talking about their ecology, and he does other stuff, and he's got a really good Patreon as well, which I support, which is where my new logo for my channel came from. And you're going to see my banner is going to change as well, because he's going to be doing one of those for me as well. World of Monsters, Arthur Kadawa does a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, but he also does cinema monsters and really gets in depth on the ancient history, the real mythology of monsters, which is really good. And we're friends, have been for ages. Jordan, the PH is silent. He does Forgotten Realms lore and monsters and gods. He's doing lots of gods at the moment, and every Saturday over in the States he does a live stream on Twitch, which I wish I could check out more. The DMG Info, Gareth over in Australia, of course, and Scotty, the DM's Craft, do a lot of crafting videos. They're really good. DMG also did this really good sort of a walkthrough video of this big monster filled dungeon underneath the tavern, which is a product that I cannot recommend highly enough. Wylock's crafting vids, of course. Wylock's got a innovative modular dungeon design thing, which I think is one of the best. Terranscapes does really in-depth terrain for wargaming and also just people who love dioramas and stuff, and yeah, he's entertaining to listen to. Runehammer and Terrainaholic. Runehammer, of course, everybody should be watching Runehammer. He's hilarious, and he's got really good info on building adventures and stuff like that, and he's just entertaining to watch. Puffin Forest does little animated stuff and stories about his gaming, and he's going to be live streaming or getting involved in lots of online gaming as well. Pair of Geeks, of course, over in England. Becky and Jason do really good videos on D&D stuff, and also board gaming, and just they're kind of erratic, but they're also going to be running they're in charge of organising the online Con+1 this year, I believe, which I hope to get involved in. Matthew Colville, everybody should know Matthew Colville by now. If you don't, what? Kevin Watts does video hangouts, so people just join his hangout and paint, and he also has a few videos as well. So Kevin Watts has been plucking away at that for ages, and he's really good at keeping that sort of painting community of miniatures alive. Keith Hersey Jr., happy birthday, Keith. Just a shout out to you, mate. I'm just plugging your channel here as well. He's got a YouTube channel. And the Terrain Tutor, Mel. Special shout out to Mel. Save the best to last. He's been doing really good videos on terrain painting, mainly for wargaming and stuff, but it applies equally well for us tabletop role players. Right, that's the shout outs out of the way. Thanks for listening, everyone. Why is there a PH? I don't know. I don't know, Aaron. Well, it's there. It's a question. Skyrim music starts playing. Oh, hoo, ha, ha. No worries, Keith. When you do a deep dive into the source, remember to point out just how big of a difference removing the art during 4th edition versus 2, 3, and 5. The art as a magic field is so important to them. The art. The art. Could you explain the art more to me? If you were ruled by one race in D&D, which would be the worst to be ruled by, and which would be the best to be ruled by, and which would be the worst? I'd say the worst would probably be... are you talking about like evil races or good races? Because that doesn't exclude humans. I'm thinking maybe the worst. One of the... let's see. Well, hobgoblins are pretty bad because they're just so authoritarian. We're talking like North Korea type nastiness. Elves, not too bad, but elves are pretty racist, as we all know, and do things very slowly. So if you're a short-lived race, the elves would just leave you behind. Everything would run really slowly, I'd imagine. I'm thinking he means more Grant. He means more the art, as in. Oh, for the magic field, the weave. Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. I just wanted to be sure. Yeah, sorcerers draw and worst, best. I'm thinking maybe halflings would be the best race to be ruled by in Dungeons and Dragons. Honestly, could you argue? Halflings would be great. Orcs and stuff would be bad. Dragonborn, not as bad as you'd think. So yeah, the weave. So the whole idea behind sorcerers is that they draw magic mainly through their bloodline, through themselves. So they're a font of magic, or they've got draconic heritage. So they may have some fiendish blood in them somewhere, or draconic. And it's powering through them. Otherwise, they're just gifted, so they are born feeling magic. So you could say that they're actually born with a psychic awareness of the weave, and they understand it intuitively. So the font of magic class in 5th edition are those who can see and feel the weave and know how to manipulate it automatically. So they gain archmage powers right from the very beginning, whereas wizards have to learn how to understand the weave. Sorcerers start off understanding the weave if they're that type of sorcerer from the get-go. So they start off gifted in magic, and they can choose not to use it, of course, whereas the dragon-blooded sorcerers don't really have a choice whether they use magic or not. If they are bullied in their apprentice school or whatever, and somebody like throws a brick at their head, magic is going to lash out at them emotionally. That's how I kind of see it, but we'll get into that when I make a video about them, I suppose. So yeah, I'm definitely keeping it in mind that the weave is how I think of magic in D&D, because Forgotten Realms is the main realm that I play in. Neogi, oh well, yeah, the Neogi don't really, I wouldn't call that ruling over you as a society. You're just basically a slave. Yeah. So yeah, ultra capitalism, I guess you could call it. Drow would be one of the worst, yes. Dark Elder from Warhammer. Oh man, I really want to get it. I should make a separate channel and just talk about Warhammer. No, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I really love Warhammer a lot. I do. About to start running 5e campaign that starts with PC shipwrecked. I ran a game just like that last time. Any advice on what things to keep in mind and what to avoid as not annoying my players? So okay, let's get into adventure building. We'll cover elemental cosmology, that sort of thing. So when you start off, before you even begin at session 0, you want to ask your players what sort of game they want to play. That's my best advice. Give them a range of options that you want to play. So you could say we start off as a shipwreck, and then it's basically you clawing your way through the wilderness to get to society. So it's a points of light type adventure where you start off at bare bones, whether you start off at 1st level or 5th level, or I wouldn't recommend going much higher than 5th level. It's up to you. I really like the first few levels of play because that gives that real sense of we're going to die at any minute. And every single encounter that the players get into, they look at you like you're trying to murder them, which is really hilarious. Particularly in my game, where quite often one or two of them will drop in a reasonably routine encounter, like 1st level characters fighting an owlbear, for instance, or 2nd level characters fighting a couple of meanlocks, which happened last adventure. That was hilarious, and yeah, just goes to show that your characters do improve quite a lot as time goes on. Hi, Dan. Oh, cool. Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, Tharizdun is the the elemental eye. I've also got to do a video on various other elder gods in D&D, part of my Lords of Ruin series. Excuse me. So yeah, starting off with D&D. When I'm going to be running D&D online this year, I'm going to be using Basic Fantasy. Basic Fantasy is basically D&D Basic from the 80s and 90s. I like it just for the simplicity, because I'm a storyteller. I don't need a lot of mechanics and things like that, and this is freely available for people to download and use, much like D&D 5th edition is as well. But I just like the idea of running some basic games online, and just to show people that D&D is D&D, whatever rule system you use. This is the 5th edition challenge rating chart that I use. So when I'm making monsters on the fly, this is the piece of paper. This is all I need. Other than that, it's just these are the baseline stats for the CR, the proficiency bonus of the creatures. So whatever they add to their skill rolls or ability checks. Their suggestion for the armor class, because it changes a lot depending on how large or small or fast or slow the creature is. And also how otherworldly or whatever. So the suggested hit point total from a range of from blah to blah, and all of this is modified. So if you change one up, another thing's got to come down, sort of thing. Then you've got the average hit points from the there's a hit points and average hit points. Then you've got the average attack bonus, the damage that they should be putting out total per round, and damage per round as a percentage sort of thing, average DPR. And the target save DC is also very important for whatever that challenge rating should be, because you'll see it's fairly consistent across all of them. And then it's just got the hit point increase compared to last challenge rating. So that's all you really need for making new monsters. Other than that, it's just adding powers and abilities to that basic core. Thanks, man. What is your favorite race and class to play? Let's see, a gnome illusionist is high on my list. Half elven bard, orc sorcerer, dragonborn fighter, just because they're so cool. Yeah, halfling wielding axe poison. Dwarven fighter, dwarven cleric, of course. I like the standard tropes just like anybody else. Where I got that CR chart, I don't know, somewhere online. I guess if I can find it, you can just do it like a search for CR chart for 5th edition, and you'll probably pop up one that looks exactly like this. There's a few out there. They're all very much the muchness. What else have I got to show you? Oh yeah, I picked up the Eberron Player's Guide as well, just so I've got more information on Eberron, because everybody asked me about it, and I don't really know a lot about Eberron, so I wanted to bone up on that a bit. Surrounded by books and things, as always. Orc Druid, yeah, they're good. Gnome Barb. Running a cosmic horror game. Yep, it's pretty easy in Dungeons and Dragons, and also sci-fi games and things like that as well. So yeah, so you establish with your players what sort of game they want to play, and you say, is it okay if I bring in far realm stuff? Do you want psychic energies and stuff? How much high fantasy and magic do you want in this game? Do you want to do like running around between the different planes of existence, or do you want to play mainly like adventuring out in the wilderness and like finding dungeons, or do you want to have more sort of like a 50-50 with adventuring in towns and getting involved in plots and intrigues and stuff with merchant houses and nobility? Do you want to establish a sort of a base of operations for your characters, or do you want them to grow up to a level where they get keeps and strongholds and start influencing the politics of the realm, or do you want them to be mostly dealing with big cosmic threats that could possibly destroy the world or the entire region, fighting big boss guys? What sort of game do you want to play? And establish that, and then you've already got a path set, and you can start thinking about the adventure in those terms. Look at modules and things which fit that style of play that they want to play. Have a look at those to draw inspiration from, if not to play those modules directly. And as for session zero, so you have people hey Gristly Knuckle, you have people who want to create their character, and then you collaboratively do the background for them. I highly recommend that, because if they're coming up with, it depends on like if you've just met those players or not. If you've known those players for a long time, then they will build their background to fit your story, and you build it's so collaborative, it's hard to define really, that you'll just know what you're doing. When they insert their character background into your story, you will change the story to put its plot hooks and tendrils into that character's background. So it's good to have just a basic background of who is your family, where were you trained, blah blah blah. Like if your character has had all of its family murdered, or the keep where they grew up got burnt down by orc raiders and things like that. Just put the brakes on that player and say, hey, look, tie your character into this background. Give them people that they know, give them family, give them connections and things like that. Otherwise, you are a murder hobo and you will not be engaged in this story. Give me background to work with for your character so that you can have resources and things in the game that the other characters don't have. I can give you a spotlight in the game where some story from your past or some NPC that you know, your character knows, pops into the game and either gives you special benefits or you get side quests and things which have special benefits for you in the long run. And it really adds to the game. So if you're one of those players who likes playing characters with no ties to anything, they're just like this emotionally devoid vagabond character who's got some tragic history in their past, throw that trope out the window. It really sucks. It's boring. It's lazy on your part. Controversial, but there you go. Sort of skill monkey type rogue who has knowledge local and dungeoneering was wondering how to use them to ask about creatures like pierces. Like, does this cave look like a den? Yeah, that's absolutely fine. One thing that, who was it? I think it was Barker, came up with this great idea of inserting a flashback to your character's training. So when you were sitting in the guild hall with Master Thanian and he was telling you about how to spot an otherworldly creature's lair, and you'll see things like, certain flowers and things will never grow near this blah blah blah, and you do a little monologue of your character's backstory and history where the player can actually input into it, and then that points out specific things that your character's skill roll, so it's a knowledge check, so it's basically an intelligence check for memory, and whether they have proficiency in it or not. And you can then put a note down on that you have had specific training from Master Thanian on how to spot aberrations, and give them a proficiency bonus specifically for intelligence checks for aberrations, like a favored knowledge class sort of thing. So that's the whole point of like tying your background story into your character. It can give them special benefits and boons that work in play. So you don't necessarily need to note it down as a character class ability or anything like that. It's really a background story ability, particularly if Master Thanian is still in play in the game world. Encourage your players to do that. Yeah, Volo's Guide. Yep. Yeah. Ancient Red Dragon do 50 display. My DM is making an Ancient Red Dragon do 50 d6 for damage. What do you think about that? I think that your characters must be very high level, or you should avoid that Ancient Red Dragon at all if possible. No problem. Yeah, so yeah, that's just experience. It's not even my idea, honestly, but I use it all the time. It's really good too, because it's like people were asking me last live stream about transitions and things like that between combat and storytelling, and that you've got lore. That's a lore transition. That's a memory transition or a background story transition in the game, in the storytelling, where you literally are doing a Karate Kid or Bloodsport type, remember the past of your training, and you do this montage about and picture this misty look into the past where he's picking up a beholder's eye stalk and showing it to you and squeezes one end of it and some ray blasts out and you're like, ooh, as a young kid, oh, and you get kind of fascinated by aberrations. 150 damage, yeah, no, that's enough to take out a castle wall easily. That's enough to blast a tower. Yeah. As a question, do you think adding OSR, original system rule ideas from the recent push in terms of white hack or godbound, where you use facts as a simplified way to help people build ties into the story? Yeah, that's exactly what I was just talking about, basically. Try talking out what the campaign would look like if they got hyped while talking about it, it is a good topic. Yeah. If you start looking at their watch, it's a bad topic. Yeah, I mean, you can gauge. You're sitting down at a table with your friends. If they start riffing off the idea, then it's a good idea, basically. Very good advice, Grant. Is there a cartoon TV series that you, or cartoon or TV series that you would use as a premise for a campaign? Funny you should mention that. The 20,000K, the 20,000 giveaway that I'm going to be doing. So, point of that is this is a massive box full of tinfoil that is going to be used for the base of building the illithid head, the beholder head. And here is gloves that I'll be using because I'm going to be using some modeling materials which you've never heard of before. So the adventure module that I was talking about doing, I've got a basic synopsis for that, a premise for the adventure story, and it's based on one I did a long time ago with some additional weirdness thrown into it. Sort of pulled out a lot of the stops and given lots of ideas. It's difficult because I want to make it set in Forgotten Realms in a specific place, but I know that people don't really want that, so it's going to be able to be inserted into any game, and I'm going to drop a lot of, there's not going to be a lot of monster statistics and things like that in there. I'll just mention monsters. So if you're playing a non-D&D system like Pathfinder or something like that, you can insert whatever creature you want, and hopefully I'll make it available on the DM's Guild if I can figure that out. It's not too difficult, I think. I mean, I figured out live streaming in 15 minutes, so that should be all right. So the inspiration for it is a movie that I just watched on Netflix a little while ago, called Annihilation, and that's a small inspiration for it, but it was the premise of the original thing which set off the idea in my head, and then I riffed from the idea of a meteor has flown through the air and hit the ground nearby to wherever the characters are, and they are tasked with essentially going and investigating where it's landed. And that's the start of the story, and then the adventure runs on from there. And there's an adventure site, and there's lots of politics that gets involved, and some climactic battle stuff. And then there's lots of investigation and weirdness, and yeah, this overlying the original quest branches out into many different problems that the characters have to deal with. What is the benefit to class race restrictions in old school D&D? What is the benefit to class race restrictions? So if you're playing original basic D&D, if you're a dwarf, then that's essentially your character class is dwarf. Elf is elf. In basic D&D, you're kind of restricted in that, like a fighter is a fighter. They do fighty stuff, and I think only really if you're playing a dwarf or an elf, the character races have restrictions. Dwarves may become clerics, fighters, or thieves. Basically, it's cultural is the reason why they have these restrictions. So you're playing a dwarf, and it's assumed that the dwarf comes from the dwarven culture, and they're trained in specific ways of being adventurers. Same with elves. Elves can be fighter magic users, or thieves, or magic users, thieves. So they're restricted, but they're one of the few races that can actually cross class into magic user and something else, because magic is so prevalent in elven community. So it's really story based, and the advantage there is that it's immersive. Yeah, the abyss was created when a shard of ultimate evil was stabbed into the elemental chaos. Yep. Probably a bit more complicated than that, but that's how we vision it. Thank you, Maximus Prophetess. Sorry if I'm missing any questions and things like that. Feel free to repeat them so that I can see them. Where was I? Elemental realms, elemental cosmology. I'll just cover this basically because I want to do a video on this as well, because I've touched upon it and talked about elemental beings as spiritual entities. So the idea is that when the D&D cosmos was formless voids within the phlogiston spheres. So as they're forming up inside there, as planets and things are still forming around their stars and things, it's basically chaos. It's like limbo. So all the elements are mixing together, and the gods don't even exist yet. It's just primordial intelligence is inside there. So it's invested into the raw elemental stuff. So mind is as much an element as rock and fire and air and water. It's all mixed in together. And the mind, of course, are the elemental spirits and the primordials. So primordials are, they have limitless power, much like genies. Genies are like baby primordials. So they have, other than that, it's elementals kind of just exist and move through it as like an animal state. So they're moving through the elemental stuff, and to them it's like water or air. They're moving through it, just like we would move through air ourselves. Just like we inhabit this conglomeration of different elements and we consider it part of ourselves. If you could touch the lamp or touch the camera or the desk and become part of the desk and move things around on the desk as if it was part of your body, then you would be an elemental. So your manipulation of the environment is not restricted to the limits of your body. You can move through whatever element you're associated with, and that's what elementals do, and that's why they're so foreign to the way that other entities think, and that's why they don't really communicate very well with mortal world creatures, because they don't understand our limitations of being stuck in one body, which is a mess of different types of elements. To them, we don't share anything. We get very territorial about movement and things like that. We're very restrictive compared to them, and very static and dead. So, and if you're deep in the elemental plane of air, for instance, the elementals are moving around you all the time. You're in an invisible ecosystem of elementals. So there's elemental plants, there's elemental insects, there's elemental rats and mice, there's elemental elephant herds, there's elemental hunter-gatherers, and there's elemental lords who are a part of all of it. So elemental lords are a part of all the elemental ecology. They're as much the gods of the elementals as we mortals have astral plane gods. So elemental lords are, you could chop an elemental lord to pieces and it would break up into different elemental beings which mule and move off from it and things. They are primal creative forces. Again, it's hard to understand that. So we have multicellularism. So you can have elementals which is like single cells, and they join together to make a multicellular organism, which is an elemental lord. And you combine that with sentience and focus and an overriding arrogance and sense of will, and that is the primordials. The primordials have magic. The primordials look out and they understand their place in the cosmos, and they want to turn everything back into that primal chaos where elementals are just free to roam and unrestricted. So as far as the primordials are concerned, chaos is better because it's ultimate freedom of movement, and it's the abolishing of all the restrictions that the mortals and their astral thought entity gods have created. Hope that answers that question of what the cosmology of elementals is. How would you put together a homebrew undead playable race for D&D? Less vampire, more skeleton. Well, the Revenant. I would use the Revenant. Obviously, that's the best. That's one of the most balanced undead classes for D&D, or races, I should say. So the Revenant is basically you have some undead traits, some undead resistances, and it's more difficult to. Let's see, what are Revenants? I'll have to look it up. But yeah, Revenants were really designed that way. Sort of undying, driven by an overriding sense of revenge or injustice or something that caused them to rise from the dead, much like a wight. So Revenants are kind of like wights. Axe is the most potent poison, it's true. Beware the grain of sand elemental. I want to make that now. Solid, liquid, gas, plasma, earth. Yeah, the elemental states. Don't forget super solid. Bose Einsteinian condensate. Have you considered any other forms of D&D branched games like Monty Cook's Arcana Evolved, for instance? I like... Let's see, what's the Monty Cook stuff like? Numenera, obviously. I think Numenera was really his masterwork as far as universal game systems is. Numenera was really good because it's wide open to all... it's wide open to pretty much anything you want to throw in there, yet it's also a pretty well-designed and cohesive system itself. One thing I really like about Numenera is that the players do all the dice rolls. The Dungeon Master is just purely allowed to think in terms of storytelling. They don't really have to do a lot of dice rolls themselves. If the players want to do something, they're responsible for all the dice rolls for it. So if you like that idea for a game, go and check out Numenera for sure. I haven't seen The Strange, and I kind of got turned off a little bit by all the mystery of his boxed set for all that sort of stuff. There was a lot of kind of hinky marketing and stuff, a lot of reputation wanking. Are you familiar with Magus class for Pathfinder? What did you think of it? No, I'm not familiar with Pathfinder stuff. I'm going to get into Pathfinder when the second edition comes out. Controversial. Yeah, I've got the Pathfinder main book. I haven't got any accessories or anything like that for it. I haven't got a monster manual for it or anything. I just wanted to check out what the Pathfinder basics were. And I determined that, yes, it is basically 3.7 D&D. So I'm not familiar with that. No, I'm sorry. How do I feel about a whole party of goblin eyes defending their homeland against the common races as a campaign? I think it's a fantastic idea. I think you should do it. Dubba. Nice to see you again. Yeah, that's a great storyline. Also, it's great to play... Hey, Jason. It's great to play evil characters as well, as long as everybody in the story is evil and they have a reason to work together. That's generally how evil campaigns work well. If they're just agents of chaos, murder hobos, then you're just asking for a campaign where the players can attack each other. And if that's the case, just make a gladiator campaign where they actually do have to attack each other. Meh. Supercritical solid. Your knowledge of what oracles is unparalleled. Yeah, well, I trained in science. Also, that's something that New Zealand's very good at is theoretical science. There wouldn't be physics if it wasn't for a Kiwi scientist. What's your favourite fantasy movie that you've drawn inspiration from? For low-level campaigns, I'd say Dragon Slayer is one of the best. Krull is also pretty cool. Conan. Dungeons and Dragons movie. No. Yeah, I don't know. All of them. I watch all of them. Wonder if a Warforged could make a homunculus. Yes, I'd imagine so. Yeah, why not? Because they can add things to their own body. So yeah, sure. Wow, there's 67 people in here. Far out. Hey everyone. Hey Lewis, good to see you too. Has anyone been with yeah. No, I don't think anybody's got a second edition playtest for Pathfinder yet. Oh, there was a question there. I missed it. Sorry, I'm just going to scroll back up. Feral Arachnid. Hey AJ, what other despair effects would you place on PCs while traveling through the Shadowfell? Yeah, that's a good one because you don't know how long they're going to be there. So it might be something which refreshes after a long rest. So exhaustion effects for one thing. Kind of like an inability to feel strong emotions. So there'd be restrictions on like bardic inspiration abilities or the ability for clerics to do minor heals, like 1d4 healing, laying on hands and stuff. So paladins would find it very hard to heal people because they heal mainly through inspiration is the underlying idea behind their heals. And minor heals are just like, you can do it, doing a little pep talk sort of thing just wouldn't work very well in the Shadowfell because the whole place is just dismal and it's really hard to think that way. It's like everybody's suffering from depression. They just can't be inspired to feel happy. Like if you get severely wounded down to 0 hit points and stuff and you have to be healed with major healing and stuff, you may suffer from a level of exhaustion as an underlying emotional effect of dying in a place of ultimate despair. It really hits you and it's really hard to recover emotionally from whatever's going on around you, particularly if things seem desperate and like you almost died in this horrible place, and what did you accomplish? And these thoughts will weigh heavily on you and give you disadvantage on things. So you get a level of exhaustion of just, oh. And then you have a sleep and you wake up and you're like, I don't feel a hell of a lot better, but you know, you can carry on. So yeah, think of it in terms of emotional drain. What else have I missed? I want to make an Aussie druid with a bogan. What? Yeah, I don't want it to feel like an evil campaign as much as just a different point of view. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Goblins don't think of themselves as evil. Some of them do. Some of them obviously revel in the fact that they're an evil race and they do nasty, horrible things just because they are goblins. But some goblins are just literally just trying to survive, and they see everything that takes away from their survival chances as evil. So they look at races that hoard things and steal things. So they see a bunch of player character adventurers and they're like, what are you doing breaking into our environment, murdering everybody and stealing all of our stuff? You're horrible. And then they look at where these things come from, and it's a place of plenty with farmlands and livestock and fabulous structures and things. It's like, why are you stealing? Why are you going out into the wilderness and stealing from us when you have so much? I hate them. That's what goblins think of us. Half golem, missing leg and arm. I don't know. Good. Glad I could help, Feral. Yeah, a campaign based on How to Train Your Dragon. Why not? Sure. That'd be a good island hopping campaign, actually. It's particularly that bit where he's out and exploring different islands and stuff on his dragon. I thought that was pretty D&D. Running a campaign with lots of devils. Any advice? And yes, I've watched all the vids that are related. Well, then you'll know that devils are, once you get involved with the devil, they tie you up in their legalese, their bureaucracy. So it's hard to get disengaged from devils once you are engaged with devils. And as soon as you summon a devil, they're playing you as much as you're playing them, and they play a very long game. Yeah, there's lots of movies that kind of have that theme where the devil always wins in the end, sort of thing. And also they don't forget that they've been around for a very long time, and all devils are connected with other devils, but by the bureaucracy means that they're tied to each other through obligation and law, which means that the resources of one devil would be the resources of another devil. So you don't really know what resources that devil has in the real world. Like, you may summon an imp thinking it's a relatively minor thing, and if you threaten that imp, it's obligated and owned kind of by another higher devil, and then all of a sudden you might be attacked by cultists who rescue this imp, because the cultists are tied to the imp's master. So you just are not aware of how involved devils are with the mortal world. That's the basic idea. But don't bushwhack your characters and overpower them. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to talk about with adventure making. Player character agency. So control over what the character does and the feeling that they have the ability to react with and best any situation that they're in. There are occasions where the characters get overwhelmed by a superior force and captured because you want them imprisoned somewhere. That should be like a once per adventure sort of thing that happens, because it really sucks as a player, obviously, to have your character overpowered and captured just because the DM says so. You may actually have, at the start of your campaign, this is an idea I suggest, have like a red card, and you say, okay, I've got this red card as a DM to play, which is where when this red card comes out, it means that I need in the story to overwhelm your characters and put them in a particular situation as part of the overall story that I'm going to be telling. So when I draw out this red card, that means I've overtaken the player agency. I'm sorry, but I've only got one of these cards to play. So when you take out that card, the players will be like, oh, okay, here it goes. Because they were forewarned and they were expecting it, and you've set it up as an expectation of the game. So they know that this is going to happen at some point. Or they'll know that there's the threat of the red card or something. But yeah, give them that idea. Don't sidewind them with something that they don't understand, that they have no control over, because they'll hate you for it. And it takes them a while to get over it. They won't trust you. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. There's no like if you've got a human who's got a missing body part, the doom time. Yes, exactly. By the way, those of you who put at AJ Pickett, it highlights it in orange and it makes it really easy for me to see it's a question. Um, what are your thoughts on the Hex Crawler style campaign recently got Hexagrapher? Yeah, they're fantastic. If your players want to play that sort of game, they're fantastic. Like if you're homebrewing your world, that's how I would do it. Really, I wouldn't even bother drawing a world map. I'd just say, okay, your characters start in the village of Flump, and there's a couple of trade towns that you're aware of, and you've been trained up to fight against the goblins which raid the town occasionally. So you have like an old rusty sword and stuff, and then it's like, well, you go out into the environment because you haven't seen the goblins for 3 years now. So let's go out and investigate whether we can expand the town's borders. And so you roll on what's in this hex and what's in that hex, and go from there. And that's a perfectly valid campaign. It's really a lot of fun. Player agency. The DM has control of the environment, the NPCs, and the loot, and hands off your character. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it means. Yeah, thanks, Locksteady. That's a good definition. The red card. That's just an idea. Sorry, Eric, I missed the start of that question. With the Devils, I would have the group trying to gain favor with different lords and trying to ascend the ladder of the rank. I mean, after the group's death. Right. Well, yeah. If the players want to play an afterlife campaign where they're actually fighting their way through the bureaucracy of the Nine Hells, good luck to you, because that's definitely not a lot of players' cup of tea. But yeah, what is a familiar that a necromancy wizard? Oh, a crawling claw makes a perfect familiar. Going to start a CSI-like campaign soon. Any good races for monsters that kind of fit that? CSI. Bards, obviously. Rogues that specialize in skills. Wizards, of course, are masters of knowledge, so they can learn things very well, and they've got a lot of spells which, like, speak with dead. Speak with dead is such a powerful change up in the way that the world works in Dungeons and Dragons compared to our world. For instance, like if you've got anybody who knows the spell Speak with Dead, then you don't really have CSI anymore. You've got Talk with Dead and find out what killed them. Investigations. That's really it. In fact, there's this idea for a society in Dungeons and Dragons where it's a sage that walks around with a trunk. Or has an office somewhere which has got a trunk full of skulls, and these are polished and very well looked after skulls that are nestling in velvet in a box, a trunk that's well protected, and all of these skulls are other sages, right, who have lived before, and all of them learn the spell Speak with Dead. So not only is this sage learning things, but he can then Speak with Dead, consult with one of these sages who he knows, maybe he's got inscriptions on their skull to identify them, or he's decorated their skull to look like that, what they look like in life. And for him, there's nothing macabre or weird or necrotic about it. He's just talking with former masters of his school, the school of sages who consult with former sages who have lived before. So that's pretty amazing. The evil elemental lords, yes, absolutely. So I'm sort of getting into the elemental cosmology as well, and the primordials and things, and that's a lead into talking about the Dawn War, to sort of complete the D&D cosmology, so to speak. Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I thought that was particularly good as well. I can't take credit for that idea. That was somebody else. I think it was on in-world forums. The Talking Dead, yes. Thanks a bunch. How would that be mitigated? Mitigated? Speak with Dead mitigated? Is that what you're talking about? Never mind the ATA? Well, destroying the remains of somebody means that you can't speak with the dead. Yeah. The turtle that keeps the scales in their shell. That's a great idea. Yeah, well, particularly, yeah, turtles. Man, that's really set off my imagination. Because turtles' parents die when they're born. So, oh, wow. Could you imagine that if the turtle parent leaves a scroll or a book that teaches their offspring how to speak with dead so that they can talk to them and ask their advice after they've passed? Wow. Wow. That really changes up the turtle scene, doesn't it? It depends on the dead person, Grizzly Knuckle. What reason have they got to lie? I mean, yeah, for sure they might not tell the truth. There's that. There's that as well. Yeah, well, they're not obligated to tell the truth, but I mean, none of us have been dead before, so what do we know? They've got their own. I mean, the dead have got their own politics. The dead have got their own afterlife that they've gone to. Zone of truth doesn't affect the dead. That's true. Wow, it's got everybody thinking, hasn't it? I like it. Do I have a favorite big bad evil guy for your campaigns? Is that what BBEG means? Um, no. I like to have recurring bad guys that evolve, but I like the bad thing to be a situation that that evil groups are taking advantage of. So if it's some artifact or something like that, that if they get hold of it, they can do bad things, very bad things. But other than that, the big bad evil guys are just a threat that the player characters can take on. Um, I don't really like having big bad evil guys that are too big for the player characters to take on. I like it being manageable. Through past experience with my own group, who will tell you exactly how badly I messed them up in the past. How do I handle time passing, like hours compressed into a few turns? Example, I had a jungle that changed from humid to frozen as night fell, but didn't know how to spring the time change. Storytelling. Like in my game at the moment, I'm actually tracking the days and the time of day, so I keep it constantly in mind how long things take to do. So, for instance, if somebody's trying to pick a lock, that's 10 minutes, and if they try and do it again, that's like 20 minutes or so. And I'm just like I'll actually pantomime the other characters sitting around smoking cigarettes, which is what I do at the table to indicate that time is passing. It's just like roll up a cigarette, lean against a wall or something while somebody's doing something else. So I'll just actually pause and just look up at the ceiling like time is passing, like this is taking a long time, sort of thing. And then when the others ask me what time of day is it, I'll sit there and I'll calculate how long everything's been going on, and then I'll give them rough estimates. So it's like 10 a.m. It's now 1 p.m. It's now about 4 p.m. and the sun is going to start going down soon because it's winter. So you need to camp somewhere. I basically just keep track of it in my head, and when they ask me what the time is, I tell them. I don't have to be very specific. Like the characters don't carry watches. Have I considered doing any videos on Zakara or any monsters specific to that setting? I'll throw in bits and pieces here and there, but I haven't got the Al-Hidim game stuff myself, so I'd have to look at all that stuff, and a lot of the resources that I have are very old. They're not current. Yeah, so I can't make any promises. I'll try and throw in some desert creatures here and there. A lot of the undead are really good desert creatures, mummies and wights and things. Wights can move around in the desert perfectly fine. Anything that doesn't need water to live is fine, and they can just bury themselves in the sand to avoid the light of the day. So yeah, quite often if you're walking in the desert at night and you see a solitary figure lurching towards you, and it doesn't seem to be harshly done in by the environment, it's probably undead. Yeah, so if you need to write up a social contract with your DM, then you're probably in a new DM group. I really recommend role playing with your friends, or having somebody in the group who is your friend. So many times I see situations where people are getting into problems that are personality problems. They're not game problems. Like the game setting itself isn't causing you issues. It's the personality of the person that you're sitting there at the table with. And really, I mean, who of us are qualified to be a relationship expert. That's really what it comes down to, is relationships. So if you're friends with the person, then the rules don't matter, because you'll have mutual respect for each other, and you'll understand what each other's needs are and things. And if somebody's not having a good time, you'll change up what you're doing to suit them, just because they're your friend and you want to hang out and have a good time. It's all of these problems with games where people have got issues with, they're not letting my character do this, or they're not letting my character do that. Then your communication is broken down and your friendship is not on par. So that's what you need to deal with. Don't worry about the game. Take your head out of the game and look at your relationship with that person. That's what's suffering, and that's what's breaking down. The game is just exacerbating whatever the problem is. So if you're coming at it like, if you're arguing about the rules and things, then you need to stop, pull your head out of your ass and say, okay, I'm arguing with this person. I'm arguing with the person, not necessarily the game, because that's what the real sticking point is, in my experience. Did a video on Twisted Rune. I don't even know what Twisted Rune is. Adam? In your opinion, what's the worst thing that could happen to a person in the D&D multiverse? Let's see. You die, you're reincarnated as a centaur, and the entire campaign takes place in the city. That's pretty bad. It's like, what's going on? I don't know. Guys, I'm out on the street, tied to a pole. I don't know. There's all sorts of horrible things that can happen to people in D&D. You could ask me what's the best thing that could happen. I don't know. You go to Elysium is the best thing. What's the worst thing that could happen? You go to the plane of infinite falling in the abyss, where you fall until the flesh flays off your bones from the wind passing by. That's pretty bad. Would you ever consider retouching upon your Giant series? Oh, anything specifically? Because I mean, that's a really long series. I could certainly retouch upon it, but I think I covered it pretty well. Mainly, it's just the technical issue of the sound not being very good on a lot of those videos. But I thought I did a pretty good job on the Giant series. I don't know what I could really add to it. Not a question, but you mentioned at the table with quite a bit. But many people these days are playing over the internet, so there are further challenges with no facial body language. Yeah, that's true. That's true. My bad. Yeah. Good point. Same sort of situation, really. I would suggest, particularly if you're playing just over voice chat, then your voice is who you are, how you project yourself. So the way that you talk and the frequency that you talk, like how often you talk, whether you're giving other people the opportunity to talk, whether you're very clear, just be yourself, be natural, speak clearly, wait for your opportunity to talk. Don't talk over top of somebody else, that sort of thing. Do basic etiquette, and also gives people the impression of who you are. It's like if somebody is talking to you on a text-based forum and all they talk in is like, their spelling is absolutely awful. You can't help but get the impression that the person that you're talking to is an idiot. Even if they're not, even if they're just like dyslexic or something, it's unfortunate. But how you come across to somebody else is whatever they've got to deal with. So if it's your voice or if it's text chat and stuff, then that's how you appear to them. So yeah, maybe I come across as somebody who mumbles. Yeah, and also there's a further question about rare monsters. I'll be bringing you rare monsters, for instance, and things that not necessarily will be seen. So, for instance, where is it? Where is that book? Okay, so this Limitless Monsters is a book that I funded through a Kickstarter from Limitless Adventures, and there's a lot of there's a few really good creatures in here, like the Void Lich, for instance, is really good. Lubber Fiends. Lots of different methods, and there's this particular creature in here, the Radiant, for instance. I'm going to be doing a video on the Radiant, but there's also some dumb ones like the Shipwreck Golem. God, come on, Shipwreck Golem. And there's a creature called the Laughing, which is also pretty awesome. A couple of interesting vampires, but there's a creature in here called the Whim. And the Whim is a really cool creature that didn't have an illustration to go with it. So if any of you saw the illustration I did, that's the picture of the Whim that I drew, just using pencils and ink. So it's an aberration creature which manipulates the emotions and whiplashes people with these tentacles that also jolts them with electricity. But essentially they just mess with people. And they've also got these little they spawn off little critters called curiosities. Yeah, so that's that. Sorry, I'm missing lots of questions. Ideas for exotic mounts for PCs that aren't ridiculous. Riding lizards, giant snails. Permanency spells video. Like spells that can be made permanent. That's a good idea for a video, actually. Yeah. Sorry for typos as well. Sorry. Did I miss your question, Crimson? No? The Twisted Rune is a secret, powerful, undead organization that is in the Forgotten Realms. Would you be interested in checking them out for a video? Absolutely, 100%. Sorry, Kristen, I seem to have missed your... Or are you just talking about spelling mistakes in general? Don't worry about it. I talk with so many people who English is their second language, it doesn't even bother me. I tend to pick up on the tone of somebody more than anything. Right, thanks. Mind flayers are so otherworldly and abstract. What kind of plots would a mind flayer and its elder brain have in the prime material? Well, for mind flayers, the prime material is now their realm. So they're creatures that originally were from the far realm, but they've been in the material realm so long now that it's a part of them. Also, the far realm is now part of the material realm. That's one of the whole kind of subplot stories of the pre-Dawn War episode, was that there was a breakthrough of the far realm into the prime material realm that introduced psychic energy into the material worlds. Prior to that, there wasn't any psychic energy. So psychic power in D&D is an otherworldly form of energy that kind of supplants magic. So that's why mind flayers are sort of anti-arcane, because they think of it as inferior to psychic power. With psychic power, you can manipulate reality directly. You don't have to go through the formula and manipulate the weave and things. So it's outside of the control of deities. That's the main point, really, is that Mystra, deities and things, control magic. They filter it and they put restrictions on it. There are no restrictions on psychic power. So a mind flayer of particular, like an elder brain of particularly potent power, can change the environment, change reality around it to everyone who's in its sphere of control. What do you think of classes being done in a promotional manner, like such as a basic class fighter can promote more advanced classes and can promote into more advanced classes? What do you think of classes being done in a promotional manner, like you start as a basic class of fighter and can promote? Oh, you mean like elite prestige classes and things from like 3.5 edition and Pathfinder? Yes, well, it's kind of like that already. Like you start off, you don't get to specialize as a different type of fighter until your 3rd level in D&D 5th edition, and I think that's fine. Everybody starts off as a basic fighter, although of course everything you do is tempered by the idea that you're going to become that fighter. So you kind of start playing that character at 1st level as the gladiator or the knight or whatever that you're going to be, and it also allows a lot of you can add extra templates and things like that, extra abilities and powers and stuff from different printed resources or stuff that you find online that you've okayed with your DM, that he doesn't find it, he finds the balance of it fine. That's cool. As long as the DM is usually as long as the DM is aware of what's going on, then it's fine. Wow, there's 83 people in here. Hi everyone. Jeez. The chat's coming thick and fast. Question about underwater adventures. Having never tried them, do you ever have any advice for it? So it's an environmental concern. The cool thing about an underwater adventure is that everybody gets the ability to fly. If you treat it like, as long as everybody's not drowning every 5 seconds, because that's the main concern, is that you can't breathe in that environment. Also, pay attention to the pressure of the water as well. Just being able to breathe underwater doesn't necessarily mean that you can survive the pressures of the ocean depths, which means an average humanoid is restricted to depths above about 120 feet or so. Anything beyond that, and they start getting crushed. They start getting the bends, you know. I've done a lot of scuba diving myself, so I know very much what that's like. Free diving down past 40 feet or so underwater is very difficult for a person who's never done it before. Beyond 80 feet, you've got to be a professional diver to do that sort of thing. So yeah. Other than that, it's a lot like playing an above ground adventure, except for there's different races involved, obviously. The visibility can be an issue in water because it gets obscured quite often, particularly if there's like a spawning area of jellyfish, then the entire area will be cloudy with jellyfish spawn. It's kind of gross, but there you go. When there's storms and stuff, the water gets murky as well. It's a more stable environment underwater because you don't have storms and things, but sound is a lot more important underwater because it travels very clearly through the water. So somebody who lets off a thunder wave, for instance, the range of the thunder wave will be 4 times as long as it would be above the water. So yeah, it's just the water itself which makes it quite interesting. You could use 13th Age method where only fighter goes up and attack bonuses versus the rest of the classes escalations die. Yeah, I'm not that yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want to restrict other classes too much in that regard. Yeah. Yeah, spells in water do change a lot, like reverse gravity, for instance. Yeah, example. Well, reverse gravity can be useful if somebody's throwing a boulder through the water, for sure. Right. Was there anything else I was going to talk about? Adventure building was the overall theme for the day. The 20k giveaway. The 20k giveaway, that's right. So, yeah, I'm going to be making a life-sized Mind Flayer head that can be mounted on a wall, and it's going to have its tentacles splayed out so that somebody can stick the head in there and have a photograph taken of them as if they're getting their brain extracted. I thought that would be fun. And yeah, it's going to be done to a high degree of reality. It's going to look very realistic. So I'm going to be using unusual sculpting materials that I don't think you will have seen anybody use before, such as part of the finishing material is going to be gelatine. So there's stuff that I've done before in the past when I was just messing around, and it's tended to work particularly well. So it's going to be a really interesting build video that I'm going to be making for that. Also going to be using a sculpting material called Paltire, which is 8 times stronger than concrete, but is very difficult to get hold of, so that's going to be interesting. What's the difference between the Underdark and just Underground? Well, the Underdark is an otherworldly underground from a different world, for instance. It's split up into different layers, different zones. So the Underdark, the deep Underdark in the world of Faerun, for instance, goes miles and miles down. So far down that it's actually hot down there. It's a temperate, humid jungle-like environment that far underground. In fact, if you go far enough underground on Earth, and there's the temperature is such and the humidity is such that you can actually die because your body is cooler than the outside environment, and water accumulates in your lungs, just like condensation forms up on the outside of a cold surface. Same thing happens if you're in a very hot environment underground where the water has nowhere to go but inside your lungs, and you have to wear breathing apparatus, otherwise you'll die. So we kind of ignore that a little bit in the Underdark of Faerun, so it goes down miles and miles and miles without heating up too much. But if you go down far enough, you start to impinge upon the border of the Feywild. Oh, sorry, the Underdark borders on the in some places on the Far Realm, and there is an energy in Toril called Phasres, which is an otherworldly energy which permeates the Underdark, which the Drow use to empower their weapons and things. And can cause strange effects. And there's also elemental nodes underground as well, which and there's flowstone, which is actual animated rock and things like that. That's not elemental, it's just like a different environmental consideration. So it's a magical environment. So the deeper down you get, the weirder it gets, and the older the ruins and stuff are, and the more crazy and creepy the creatures are. And of course, if you're far down enough in the Underdark, there's entire environments and ecosystems down there that have never seen the light of day, where sunlight and things are just mythology to them. Yeah, but there's huge caverns and things which are almost like island, and there's caverns down there which are large enough to contain countries. They're that big. Yeah, and so you start from the skin of the Underdark is the dungeons and everything that humans and other races have built on the surface. Then you go the middle sort of Underdark, the mid deep Underdark is the delvings of kobolds and goblins and orcs and that sort of thing, and troglodytes and stuff. And you've got the bulk of the dwarven mountain homes and things like that. And then deeper down than that is the deep dwarven diggings and places where giants locked people up and stuff. And then even deeper than that, you get into Myconid kingdoms and the domain of the drow and that sort of stuff. And even deeper than that is places where even drow freak out going down there that far, because it's full of aberrations and horrors and oozes and mind flayers and aboleths and all sorts of creepy, horrible things. Hope that answered that question. Is the Nine Hells series picking up again soon? Greetings from Germany. Hello. Yes. I want to get. I've got so many things to do. Yeah, I really do want to pick up on the demons and the devils. I haven't even started the demons series yet, but devils, yeah, for sure, and the Nine Hells. I think, have I covered all of the layers of the Nine Hells? I think so, but there's a lot of devil types, devil species that I haven't covered yet. So yeah, I do want to pick up on those again. Can't stay, but love your content. Just wanted to have a chance to say hello while you're live. Hi, Logan Simpson. Nice to see you. Have you ever played old school D&D? I haven't played White Box set, but I started off on D&D Basic and AD&D. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So from there on, pretty much every single edition. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, saw another YouTuber bring it up. I'm glad others make it work. I don't know why. I thought you had to pick one. Not sure what you're talking about there, Crimson. So even if not on a proper world, Faerun Tyrrell, what is the actual that has an actual Underdark? Is there a deep underground area with deep gnomes, Lith and Drow still consider it Underdark? Well, if it's impossible to answer that question, because it's really up to you and what that world is. Kryn has got a different sort of situation, as does Eberron, Corvair. So if you're creating a totally homebrew game, then it's entirely up to you. They may come from a realm more like the Shadowfell. So the Shadowfell could be the Underdark of another world, for instance. It's basically an area of darkness and stuff where, yeah. So you could go into a Barrow Mound or something, and it would actually go to an extra dimensional space like the elemental plane of Earth. So the elemental plane of Earth would be in a different situation entirely compared to the Underdark, for instance. And you could walk into the elemental plane of Earth from the Underdark with barely even recognizing what you've done. So that could be interesting. Come up to the surface and it's a different world that you've walked into. What? How did that happen? So yeah. You posted a video this week on whites. Any thoughts beyond your video on a white dragon? I'm in the process of building it for a game I'm running tomorrow. Yeah, so it was actually an old Dragon magazine that I read that from. Oh wow, that's an old white dwarf. What's that doing in there? Wow, these ones are old. That's Dragon number 63. Some of you asked me the other day about old school stuff. Here's Dragon magazine number 63 from a long time ago. Taped it together with plastic. So yeah, white dragons are created. They're constructed by necromancers. and they have the same basic abilities as a wight, as well as creating a wight from a creature doesn't take away that creature's attack viability, so they've still got a breath weapon, although it's different. It's a necrotic breath weapon, I believe, or something. So yeah, I actually did talk about white dragons in that video, but I would just say make an undead dragon, like a dragon skeleton or dragon zombie, but give it leave its combat stats alone, and give it a life train ability. Hi Norton, Nautilus Malus. Druid White make zombie plants. Why shriekers and spore pods? Just hit me. And those mushroom people. Ah, yeah, true. Yeah. Zombie myconids. Horrible. What's in the Karatur Underdark? Same sort of thing, I would imagine, except the creatures down there would speak a different language. The interesting thing about Karatur is that deities are restricted in where they can operate. Like the gods have zones that they're in control of. So the Underdark in Karatur would be controlled by the celestial court and the Underdark of the celestial area. So that's like the Jade Emperor and all that sort of stuff. So you'd have Oni and other type of like more Asian mythology creatures down there. But I don't know. That's kind of unexplored in Forgotten Realms. There's so much that doesn't have stuff written about it. Cool. Thanks, Super Jet Force. Nice to see you. The Veggie Pygmy. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, the Warrior Dragantha. Nice to see you. I recognise you from the comments. What's our time doing? 4:19. Okay. We've been going for an hour and 16 minutes. 83 people in here. Hello, everyone. Wow. What if you went deep enough in the Underdark? At some point, gravity flips so that you rise to the surface of another world. That's actually Mystara. The basic D&D world has got a hollow center. So that's exactly what happens in Mystara. How do you make a devil deal so clever you trick the party? I can't even tell you. Essentially, it would be missing information that you haven't told the players. But again, you've got to be really careful about that. Would Mount Celestia have an Underdark? No, it doesn't. pretty straightforward question. Does Mount Celestia have an Underdark? No. No, it does not. Its Underdark is the previous layer of Mount Celestia. So you just drop down to the next layer. Hello, Alex. Could the dragon demons that Tiamat created make tieflings? Ooh. Well, they're demons, and tieflings are from devils, so they're fiendish. I would say for my game, no. But for your game, sure, why not? I don't really yay or nay whether something can exist in your game. Could the dragon demons that to be rangers would build conclaves? Yep, absolutely. AJ Pickett, if Earth exists in D&D, then why don't we have magic, or do our gods exist? I.e., does God exist in D&D? So the Earth existing in D&D is really down to Ed Greenwood and the way he just sort of he inserted himself into the setting, sort of thing. Like when he went to cons and stuff like that, and he was dressed up as a wizard, and he said, you know, Elminster, I know Elminster. Elminster comes and has a cup of tea, and we talk about stuff. And Mordenkainen and Elminster are these arc wizards who travelled between the different worlds. So as far as Ed Greenwood was concerned, D&D was a multiverse of the different spheres and things. So do I? Yeah, like I don't. It's a possibility of you traveling to Earth from the D&D world, and we've got different types of magic. Like we've got technology and things and stuff. And back then it would be like 16th century or so. So you'd come back, or 17th century, would be the time period that you'd reach if you travelled from Faerun, so you'd have black powder weapons and things like that. But it would be a zero magic environment. But and does that mean that magic doesn't work on Earth? Well, how would you get there in the first place? You know, you'd have to spelljammer your way there. There'd be no mystical portals to Earth, so it'd be a truly lost realm. Or perhaps you could get there through the Feywild and you'd turn up in Ireland or from Stonehenge or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. As for God existing in D&D, I wouldn't even touch on the subject personally, because it's not really it's. If you're a group of people who were of faith and you were playing Dungeons and Dragons and you wanted to include that in your game, sure, why not? You could actually go on really cathartic crusades against actual demons and devils and things, and free people, and have, like, your characters could be playing priests and you could be exorcising people and that sort of thing. Sure, why not? That would be awesome fun. You could project that sort of, like, you know, it's the final days of Earth and you're playing and you're using D&D as a rule set. Why not? That's fine. But how it sort of sits with the D&D lore, well, I wouldn't even touch on it. I guess because I'm a child of, like, the 1980s, and I lived through the whole Satanic Panic thing. It's still pretty raw, and although D&D is a lot more mainstream these days, we still live in a world which is very charged when it comes to subjects of faith. So I wouldn't make any official rulings on it. In my D&D home game, we don't even think about it. It never comes up. We just deal with the existing pantheons and things like that, and that's all we need. And AO is kind of like the overgod sort of thing. But I mean, even in my my recent video on a theory of cosmology for the overgods and an ecology of the overgods, I still avoid the issue of is there one central intelligence overriding it all. It just doesn't come up. It's not important to me. Christian D&D better have good snacks. Yeah, absolutely. Wafers and wine. That's the thing that gets me with Christians, that they don't drink, whereas Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine. Why are they so against alcohol? I don't know. Seems crazy to me. That was a rhetorical question. I don't really need an answer. Could you see a Fey patron cursing their warlock with an only child ward over as a curse as part of the pact? Yes, I could definitely see that as being hilarious. Babies. Your characters having babies in D&D would be the subject of an entire different live stream for sure. Because that definitely happens. I mean, you know, people still have babies and stuff in Dungeons and Dragons. Could you see a Fey patron? God, the Egyptian gods and Norse gods exist in D&D, so I don't really get it. Yeah, they do. Next question. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You gotta tippy toe around the whole thing. Still in this day and age, you got to tippy toe around what is mythology and what's not mythology in Dungeons and Dragons. Christians hate it when you call their religion mythology. They do, and everybody points at Scientologists being crazy, when in actual fact it's just another religion in its earliest stages. Back when Christianity first existed, the Romans basically looked at them the same way. It's this strange cult. And before that, it was Mistra, and before that, it was, you know, Baal and the Philistines and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it all relates back to all the religions are connected, and they go back, and they just what was once the beliefs of others becomes the stories of others, and becomes the folklore, and becomes movies and things. I mean, we make movies about the Clash of Titans and that sort of stuff, and that was the religion of other people long ago. They really believed in it quite fiercely and would kill you for disagreeing with them. And there has been death and torment and torture throughout the history of the faiths. So what is mythology, what is stories, and what's actual religions and beliefs? It's a very fine line, and that should be all I really need to say on the subject. So they don't really include Christian mythology, Christian faith in Dungeons and Dragons because people felt about it quite strongly. There was one particular article by in Dungeons and Dragons, Dragon Magazine, very early issue, which talked about it as if it was mythology, and that resulted in a decade of persecution. Did I sound a little bit angry about that? Maybe I still am. Ah, the Philistines. Sips coffee. Exactly. Oh, what was that, Grant? Does it connect to any of the prime aligned planes? An hour late, yeah. 3 Dagalator. I can never pronounce it. But Da says, I've seen a lot of hate for necromancy. Is it strictly evil? What do you think? Can you be a good necromancer? Now, this is an interesting subject, because when I was originally talking about liches and necromancy and the undead, I was firmly of the opinion that you cannot be a good necromancer. My opinion, thanks to the swaying of many people who have been arguing with me about that for a long time, has changed. I do believe that you can be a good necromancer. Yes, I do believe that. Because this is when I was investigating wizards and things, and I thought, how come wizards live so long in the folklore and in the stories? How come wizards quite often live for hundreds and hundreds of years? It's because they know necromancy. It's because they are draining life from lesser things and bolstering their own life force. It makes sense to me. I mean, that they would learn necromancy as a form of magic. And it's like, well, if you could learn how to drain the living energy from every fly that you kill in your room, why would you not do that to bolster your own life? If you can kill weeds in your garden and drain the life into yourself to make yourself live longer, why would you not do that? It's a no-brainer. It's obviously you would. It's no more dangerous than eating a salad, you know, or eating like a rabbit meal or something. You're essentially just absorbing their life energy into you, like you would eat their flesh to sustain your body. So I believe that you can be a good necromancer. I mean, essentially you're killing something and draining its energy, so that's an evil act per se. But every form of predation is an evil act. Eating a salad is an evil act because the plants were alive. I mean, vegans aren't exactly guilt-free in that regard. They're still killing things and eating them. Plants are animals too, sort of thing. But yeah. And if you ever say that plants don't feel pain and stuff, well, that smell when you've just freshly mowed a garden, a lawn, well, that's the smell of plants screaming. Yeah, necromancy is just a tool, but in order to create a zombie, if you're in a small town and you go into the local cemetery and you dig up a fresh body and you turn it into a zombie and it's now walking around, that zombie is going to have family in that town that look, it's Uncle Festus who's now walking around and eating people. Whoa! Or in Dungeons and Dragons case, tearing them limb from limb because they don't eat brains. But still, it's an evil act. It's an evil act to do that. So yeah, it really depends. But I think in certain circumstances, you can use necromancy to a limited extent. Like talking with the dead is a necromancy spell, but it's not an evil thing to do. Yeah. But you can, like, if you really want to get into necromancy and be a necromancer, then it works with negative energy, and negative energy is anti-life energy. So you're damaging the environment. It's an evil thing to do. Yeah. You could do it. You could start off doing it. I love the smell of grass screaming. Yeah. Cries of carrots. Yes, I knew that would get a reaction from people. Let the rabbits wear glasses. So yeah, if you get really heavily into necromancy and you want to do powerful acts of necromancy, like become a lich and things like that, then you can't argue that that's a good act. You could be a Baelnorn, or you could be a wight that rises because it's obsessed with some injustice or something that it needs to fix. But a wight is a tormented creature that makes a pact with dark powers, like the powers of good. Don't make pacts that create wights. They don't do it. They say, look, your time is over. Others will take care of the situation. Everything's in hand. We're aware of the situation. You need to pass on to the afterlife. The Raven Queen, for instance, will prevent you coming back from the undead, from death. So there are powerful forces which try and prevent you. There's a tide. There's a flow towards the afterlife that that spirits have to be able to resist in order to return to the mortal world in the first place. It's very difficult for them to do so and remain intact. It drains a lot of their energy, their self, to cross back over the border into the living world. So they need the assistance of a dark power to boost them and send them their way. And Orcus and other powers exist to do that. Plants is one of the 14 kings of existence. Yes, for sure. Plants, molds, fungus. What do you think of an ancient shadow dragon as a hexblade warlock patron? I'd probably be... ancient dragons are interesting. I think I wouldn't say no. Obviously, I don't really say no to anything that somebody wants to run in their game. It's really up to you. I think as a bad guy, they would grant powers for sure. They probably have a limited amount of warlocks that they could operate. But again, in D&D, it's perfectly fine to some powers can access energies that they can pass on as warlock granted powers. So it's not necessarily coming from them personally. They can't access the energy themselves. They just have the power to open a conduit and send it to their warlock. And the warlock doesn't necessarily know that it's not coming from them personally. So there's that option, and that opens up the path for everyone to have any sort of warlock patron you want. They don't necessarily have to be super powerful. Yeah. Mold. Well, molds are, yeah, my molds in the fungus kingdom. Yeast, for instance, is fungus. That always cracks me up when people are talking about making bread and beer and stuff. It's like, you realize that you're eating fungus or drinking fungus juice. That's what it is. Isn't there resurrection in D&D? Don't players use that all the time? Why doesn't anyone else just get resurrected? Exactly. So they have the good powers, the powers that be have granted this person the ability to resurrect others. It needs to be so you can't resurrect somebody against their will. They need to want to come back. And the powers of good have basically said, okay, you're a good person. I'll leave it up to your judgment on the scene. So you're on the scene. You're my agent on scene. And if you ask me to bring this person back to the living, I'm going to assume that it's for a very good reason. And if you're saying my name, then I have awareness of everything that's happening within 12 miles anyway, so I'll know exactly what's going on. So you can even rule it so that if somebody's done something really, really, really bad, something very evil, and you decide that you don't want to use speak with dead, you actually want to raise them from the dead to interrogate them, the gods may say no. The gods may say, nope, he's gone on to his just punishment and he cannot come back from the dead. Or the nine hells has now got him contractually bound, and they say, no, his soul is now ours for punishment as by the divine pact that we signed at the beginning of time. He's now a property of the nine hells. You'd have to deal with a devil lord, like a demon lord or something, a pit fiend or something like that, in order to get him back. So it just wouldn't work. Axe poison! Oh my god, it's axe poison! Run, everyone! Nobody has the moral fortitude to use axe poison wisely and responsibly. That's right. Ultimate power brings ultimate responsibility, and ultimate power corrupts. Absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. If you had the power to kill anyone, how could you resist? The PHB actually addresses bringing the dead back. It explicitly states only evil people do so regularly. Good people can raise the dead, but do not do so frequently. Exactly. So it doesn't forbade people from raising people from the dead. It just says that the act is distasteful to them and they don't do it frequently. Exactly. All right, everyone. I'm going to head off. It's been an hour and a half. I wanted to actually restrict these live streams to an hour or so because I've got a video to make. All right. Thanks, Jacob. So aberrations, beasts, celestials, constructs, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, giants, humanoids, monstrosities, oozes, plants, and undead are the 14. Nice. celestials. I'll just say like outer planes, outsiders. So that would be fiends and celestials. Okay, heading off, everybody. What was the 20k giveaway? The 20k giveaway is the Mind Flayer head bust that I'm going to be constructing. I'll be doing all that as a video that you can see me doing it. And I'm also going to be creating an adventure, and I'm also going to be buying and illustrating a monster manual and giving that away to one of my Patreon supporters. But the adventure will be available for everybody on the Adventurers Guild at some point. Okay. See you later, guys. See you later, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. All 88 of you. Good grief. I'll catch you again next week. Same time, same channel. Thank you for all the questions. You kept me very busy. I haven't done any painting at all. Oh, terrible. Hey, thanks, X-Poison. I love those super chats. They're awesome. How do you enter? You just enter by being a subscriber on my channel for the 20k Mind Flayer head giveaway. For the and of course you be a Patreon supporter for the illustrated monster manual, and the adventure will be available for a pay what you want on the DM's Guild. Yeah, that'll be available for everyone. It's not going to be high production value. It'll just be me like hand drawing everything and just putting it up there as PDFs so everybody can have it in one go. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll catch you next week. Be well, be healthy, be nice to each other, play games. Catch you later.